Okay, we're live. So I was just reading your email about the desktop versus mobile. So that makes sense to me, to kind of treat mobile as its a possible future extension, but mention it periodically as we go through the modules that we've already got planned.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I'm good with that. I think the place where we'll probably see the biggest difference is how we introduce the visual editor interface, although I'm hoping that we're going to see more convergence. My understanding is that visual editor folks are planning to, if they haven't already, move the VE to an enabled status on mobile apps, but I'm not sure when and how that's happening. I think it's probably going to happen on mobile web prior to mobile apps. The reason I bring that up in particular is I think you mentioned the Nigeria use case. There's my mind's blanking, for the free Wikipedia service, whose name I'm for some reason not remembering right now. Wikipedia Zero, yes. Those occur over the apps. And so that's going to make things interesting for people who are trying to do this in Nigeria and other folks who are trying to use Wikipedia Zero to edit.
Right.
So
basically, I wanted to get at that. I think that a desktop is relatively consistent. I mean, visual editor is changing and modifying as time goes on, but it's relatively consistent. And I think mobile editing is going to change significantly, rather quickly by comparison.
Okay.
That's just my guess, and I think we could probably pick the brains of several people who are actively working on it to get a more accurate measurement. But I do think that for the sake of this tutorial series, it would probably be best to focus on desktop and then try to find the best ways to teach that, and then kind of flag, like I said in the email, sections that we might want to mention for mobile, and then if we want to do a second pass, a version 2 of the video later, the video series, or make a module, we'll figure that out.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess what I was trying to say is, if and when Visual Editor comes full force to mobile, it may not be necessary to do another module for mobile editing, because hopefully there'll be alignment between the interfaces.
Hopefully.
Yeah, we'll see. Okay, so that's one feature. The other feature I mentioned, I don't know if you caught this email, was about what to do concerning the design principle that editor stickiness, or user stickiness in general, might be enhanced by facilitating social interaction at all times per that design video, and what to do regarding how this video series can sort of tell people about the channels where that sort of thing is possible. And so IRC is definitely one option. The tea house is an option, although I wouldn't exactly necessarily call it a social space first. That's not a first and foremost purpose, at least I don't think of it that way. And then there's the question of what do we do about potentially mentioning the fact that there are lots of people talking about Wikipedia on Facebook. So what are your thoughts on that?
I'd say the tea house is probably the best bet for that, just because it's a place for people to, it's designed to field newbies. And a lot of people don't have IRC. A lot of newbies don't have IRC, and I don't want to bring people to a kind of proprietary site like Facebook. That it could be practical, but it might be just worth mentioning that there are different groups out there, different ways to discuss things. But it's a little tricky to figure out the conversation. Like, you don't want to fork the conversation in 1,000 different places,
Yeah.
So I would say if it's like, are you thinking basically for people to be able to ask questions?
Well, there's that, but also there's just the human connection with the community factor, and at that, Facebook excels. And the other option that just occurred to me, I didn't mention in my email, but it's just now popping into my head, is maybe placing more emphasis on the Wikipedia chapters and user groups, which are explicitly designed with this purpose in mind.
That's possible. It's also something we could kind of develop for the series if you want to, but I don't think I don't know if that would be a good idea. Maybe it's something to evaluate more, to think about some more. Like, where should we direct people to discuss things?
Okay.
So maybe that's like, we just kind of leave a pin in that. People might have more ideas, or maybe there's a page on, like a page on Meta or someplace where people can go to ask questions. There is an help desk on English Wikipedia that might work, but I don't know. I think they're all kind of, there's reason to evaluate.
There's, I think the way I had it structured in the draft script was that I was planning to discuss the tea house primarily in the help section of the video. But then this other factor of how do you connect with the larger community, I think would fit more in my section about discussions and talk pages and other ways to communicate. And I see those as slightly different things. Because of course those discussions can include social interactions, they can include policy discussions, they can include technical discussions, and a large range of other things other than just getting help. So my thinking is probably I could emphasize the tea house, and maybe to a lesser extent IRC and some of the village pumps in the help section, but then mention these other venues where these other discussions happen more in the discussion about talk and conversations in general.
That's a good idea. I like that. And that's something that I imagine could be revisited later. But I think you can point to, talk about this, or if you want to discuss this, here you go. Here's the place to go and do it. And there are, as much as I personally dislike it, there are multiple forums for it.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing though about having the multiple forums is that if you know what you're doing, you can choose the venue and the type of platform that you're using that best suits your needs. Of course, the downside is you have to know what you're looking for first, and it's not necessarily obvious which one to choose and where to go.
I think there should be some kind of line of dialogue somewhere that prefaces this. Wikipedia is very big, very complicated, and because it's grown organically, and by design it's very organic, there can be multiple locations.
Yeah, okay, that's good. All right, so let's circle back to my alpha draft of Module 0, and I'm just now taking a look at your comments here. All right. Yeah, so definitely the timings are definitely estimates at this point. We'll know more as we go forward. And of course, this is one of the advantage of producing all these modules concurrently instead of in sequence, is this way we can edit this relatively easily before we push it out the door and say this is actually how many minutes it takes.
Right.
Let's see. Yeah, okay, so I like that line about you can watch this, here's just select the topic you want to learn about. That works. What's the question mark about LearnWiki?
Oh, you had a trademark icon mark on there, and I was curious if that was serious or.
Actually, this came up in a discussion with communications. They were talking about trademarks, and it occurred to me that there have been people who have gone off and done similar work on YouTube and other such venues. I don't know how all this is going to pan out yet, but the sort of implication of that very brief conversation I had with communications was that I should have a talk with legal about this trademark issue. So when we get to that point, which is a way further down the road, I'll probably have that conversation with trademarks about whether that name should be included in somebody's list of trademarks.
Makes perfect sense to me.
Okay.
Later down the road, it's going to be a question as to whether or not WMF takes this name on, but I think that's a great idea to get it locked away rather than.
And I'm not sure how familiar you are with trademark law, and I'm not a lawyer, but my understanding is the standard for claiming a trademark under TM is a much lower standard than claiming it under the circled R. So from my reading, it's a very safe thing at this point just to put the TM there. R is a whole different matter. There's expenses and all kinds of other stuff that comes if you go to that standard, and I'm not sure we want to go there yet.
Okay.
But at least from where I'm standing, this is the safe thing to do at this point, and then we can decide later how we want to move forward.
Sure. That sounds great to me.
Okay, cool. Let's see. So let me rephrase this. I spent more time than I was anticipating struggling with how to describe in the slide deck what people were seeing and what they were hearing. Did the way I put that together make sense to you as you were going through it?
Yeah, it made sense to me. I was able to zip right through it.
Okay.
So what would be so this is sort of like this is all designed to just be the introduction, correct?
Yeah, so this is the preface module that I anticipate not everybody's going to watch. It's just for people who are actually more interested in understanding sort of the meta-level overview of the series.
Okay, so the only thing I would say about it is if you could describe the images, the visual that we're seeing, somewhat more. Different people have different ways of kind of how their brain works. And I don't know if you're more text-driven or image-driven or audio-driven, etc. But it seems like if you could do for visual, when you mark a visual here, like I'm on slide 6, looking at medical content.
Okay.
If you could describe what's on the screen, like medical content kind of encapsulate it, but if you could be just slightly more specific, like we're seeing that's a good general description, but it can seem like we're seeing a wide screenshot of Wiki project, right?
Okay.
Or something like that. And then if you want to later, it's you could say close up of the info boxes or something on the project. I don't know what you would show, but to be very specific about what we might be seeing.
Okay.
When you have the option to do that. Otherwise, I thought everything was fine.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so as far as the visuals go, I actually left that vague in some cases on purpose because I'm thinking it might take me a while to actually settle on which images to use where. And so for the sort of the alpha level overview, I actually backed away from spending more time trying to select specific visuals. I know, and one case in describing Lamb STEM, I actually went to the effort to actually figure out what images I might use. I guess for a combination of timing reasons for the alpha draft and also because I don't want to feel like I'm overcommitting at this point to something that might change as we go down the road, I wasn't terribly specific, but I guess what I could say is something like, possible image here or something like that, and then kind of describe what the options are that we might choose to fit in a particular place like medical content.
Yeah, I think that would work. I think that would work well if you had something like you put in brackets or parentheses, or even on the note on the side, like what your ideas might be without locking it. And this is all a work in progress right now, so I wouldn't worry too much about creating an impression like this is a final draft.
Right.
So, if you could just put like kind of general, more specifics about what you might be thinking, what might work for that section. You know, I think that would help. Otherwise,
Nope.
I think this is totally fine.
Okay, cool. All right, so thanks for that feedback. And I guess my next step will, after I deal with those few tweaks, will be to take a look at Module 1. And if all goes well, I can send that off to you probably, well, I have an exam on Monday, so my brain's kind of locked into that mode. But hopefully between now and then, I will have time to do at least some work on Module 1. And then I guess I'm waiting also for feedback on what people like Aaron and Jonathan think about the social stuff, because Jonathan in particular, I think, has done a fair amount of work in understanding how newbies interact with the community, and I think his feedback would be really helpful in that area.
Okay. I mean, I think we're both on the same page that people generally contribute less content on mobile.
Right.
Content. Maybe they do. Maybe the kind of people who do typos and stuff all the time. Maybe they do the same amount of content. I don't know. I haven't compared. I haven't looked at it. Do a lot of writing. You're probably going to be doing it on desktop.
Right. Right.
So, and I think, you know, from just my personal taste in visual editor, I think it's good that we teach kind of simultaneously. If possible, you know, just like doing references in visual editor is like so much easier.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd leave it up to you for what you think, you know, what your taste is.
Yeah, I like this idea of just referencing mobile occasionally as things move on and we go through the modules. And yeah, I think it's some of the stuff like the policy stuff is going to be the same. So that's helpful that we will probably not need to mess with that between desktop and mobile. So that, and actually a fair amount of what we end up discussing is stuff like policies and where to get help and communications and all that actually would probably be the same for desktop and mobile. So that's a good thing. I may note more in the modules that actually talk about interface stuff, about that distinction between desktop and mobile. Another thing that just crossed my mind is, if I'm remembering correctly, I think the mobile folks are actually trying to make it such that the learning curve on the mobile interface is relatively smooth. And if that's the case, that decreases the need for a significant amount of instruction for how to use mobile. But I guess that's something we can move further down the road.
Yeah, I mean, it's something if we could, because I think that to take for the sake of like writing this first draft, I think it's going to be good to just put a note in whenever you come across something that might differ. And to revisit those things. And then I think when the first draft is done, we'll be able to have a list of questions to ask people who are working on mobile. How does this differ? How do you expect it to differ in the future? Is it important that we mention this? And so forth.
Yeah.
And I think that would be a good way to go. I wouldn't get trepidatious on the first draft for now. Gotcha.
Okay, so I think I've got what I need for now. Anything else you want to run by me while we're talking?
No, that's it. I think this is a good first stab at the introduction.
Okay, thanks, Victor, and I'll be in touch probably more via email over the course of the next week.
Okay, great.
All right, talk to you later. Bye.